just so while you're setting up, you'll know exactly where to go. All of the agenda and the attendance form will be digital. So once I share this bit.ly link with you guys, you'll be able to see that pretty clearly. Okay. This. Awesome. Perfect. Let's see. And are you guys able to see this icon pretty well? You're able to see the bit.ly? Hi, glad you made it. Perfect, I see you guys can see it. If you could just type this bit.ly, this yellow bit.ly into an open window, a new window, it should give you access to our actual agenda. Perfect, awesome. Let me know if you guys have any issues opening up the bit.ly as well. Excellent. If you guys can see it and you've been able to get the bit.ly open, in another window, if you could just hit that plus sign and just open up a new browser window. If you could go ahead and to log into newsela.com, just to have that open, that also be great too, just in case we move from the actual slide deck into the actual solution of Newsela, which we will do because we're going to do a little searching and things of that nature in this session. So if you guys could go ahead and go to www.newsela.com, that also would be excellent. Just let me know when you guys are ready to rock and roll, and I'll begin. Once you have the, sorry about that. Once you have the attendant, once you have the actual document up, you'll see another, it should take you to this agenda right here. If you could also just type this link, like I'm just typing it, go.newsela.com/Belton. If you put that into a new window, like I'm opening right here with this X, just gonna copy and paste that. It'll take you to a page that looks like this, all right? You're going to click this attendance form right here. It's pretty quick and painless. It'll be about 3 or 4 questions, your first name, last name, your school email, and your school name. This will just allow me to keep in contact with you guys should I have any additional resources to share out with you, or I just need to get in touch with you. So if you could follow those steps for me, that'd be awesome. Again, I just have this bit.ly right here. Once you're in that bit.ly, you're just gonna go ahead and copy this into a new window and then click that attendance link. Uh-oh. All right, I'm going to assume that you guys are ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. This session is going to be all about vocabulary and how you can use the Newsela vocabulary power words in particular to really push achievement and build in academic vocabulary and understanding with your students. All right. So again, my name is Belton Mickle, and I'll be your professional learning and engagement manager. I represent the Southeast, so I'm down here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been teaching for over 13 years. I've taught kindergarten through 6th grade, former administrator, literacy consultant. Prior to coming onto Newsela, I was a national consultant for Renaissance Learning, focusing on their data-driven software STAR and Accelerated Reader. Hold on one second, I'll turn it right back for you. Got it. So I still have some friends that need that bit.ly. If you could do me a favor, go ahead and write that bit.ly down in case there's other friends that may be coming in the room where you guys are so that you can quickly share it because that's the only way that you're going to be able to access the agenda as we move forward throughout the slide deck. No problem, of course. So if you have any questions, feel free. You can always email me here at belson.mickle at newsela.com. Or if you like to Twitter, I put my Twitter on there so that you can always hit me up on Twitter. I'm always looking for new Twitter buzz, new people I can interact with. So all of that information will be here as well as in your agenda too. So know that you can reach out to me for support. All right, I'm going to be cognizant of the chat in case you guys have questions. I want to be able to answer your questions in context. I don't want this to feel like a formulaic session. So please chat your questions in. I'm looking right at my screen, so I'll try to make sure that I'm being aware of those questions that come in. So just to set the purpose or frame the agenda, the purpose or set our intention for what we're going to do in the session today, here's our agenda. So we're going to start off initially, before we even dive into any of these items, I'm going to do a quick just Newsela 101 review of just some of the features that we have, because you'll need some of those as you look into some of these agenda points that we go into. So we'll start off with that. Once all of that is done, we'll go into let the cat out the bag, and we'll actually participate in the activity, a vocabulary activity, and talk and share about it. Then we'll dive into the best of both worlds, where we'll look into the word wall that students are able to collect words on as they read these different power words and the variety of articles that we have. We'll talk about how you can utilize the word wall in your instruction. Then we'll get into hitting the nail right on the head and talk about assigning. How can we assign to really strengthen that vocabulary instruction and awareness that we want our students to have using that assign feature. And then lastly, we're going to go into look before you leap, if we have time, to talk about some context clues and how you can use context clues to build meaning and understanding using some of the words that appear in the articles that we can find today. All right, you may notice that some of these are some idiomatic expressions. I'll explain a little bit about those as we continue on. I can't talk today for some reason. All right, so I told you a little bit about me. I want to know a little bit about you guys. If you could just quickly type in some of these questions. Are you guys a one-to-one school? What subject areas will you be using Newsela the most in? And what's some strengths of your school district? You don't have to answer all of them. Those first two are really the most important ones for me, just to know if you guys are one-to-one or if you're going to be utilizing the print features as well as the subject, so that I can kind of curate the session as we move throughout. All right, so I'll give you a few seconds just to answer those questions, and I'll peek into the chat box. I'm seeing some panelists. We use Newsela ELA for ELA. We are not one-to-one. We average a device for every 2 students. Okay, cool. That's great to know. Thanks for telling me that, Mr. and Mrs. Moss. Can't tell. I'm looking. That's great to know. If there's any other, McBorder is not one-to-one. Okay, awesome. 2-to-1 for independent reading times and stations. Okay, awesome. This is going to be great because a lot of the things that we do throughout the session, you can use them in partners. We are 1-to-1 in 4th and 5th. We use Newsela for ELA. Excellent. Florence is not one. 2-to-1 devices. Okay, so I'm hearing the theme of 2-to-1. Most folks are not 1-to-1. 3-to-5 is 1-to-1. Smith 3-to-5. Okay, excellent. So some of you are 1-to-1. Some of you are 2-to-1. All of that will be most helpful, and I'm seeing a lot of ELA repeat, which is great. That's my specialty. So we'll talk about some different strategies that we can use where we can have students partner up in Jigsaw and do some different vocabulary exercises in pairs. We can also work for that too. Newsela for reading, science, social studies. Excellent, Kelly Kemp. Perfect. So I'll be able to showcase all of those. Vocabulary is really going to lend itself nicely to both reading and science because there's a lot of domain-specific vocabulary in both of those. And we're going to be able to talk a little bit about understanding those different types of vocabulary that we see and how we can best utilize those types of vocabulary words that we have in Newsela to strengthen, again, that cognition and understanding while reading. All right. So we do a lot of efficacy studies in New York relative to if Newsela works or not. And here are a few of those studies. One study found that using Newsela twice a week can lead to 2 times the reading gains, and up to 3 and 4 times if you're using the product with consistently and fidelity with anything. All right, we want you to see Newsela as something that's going to be adding to the things that you already have going on with your scopes and sequences, your lesson objectives, your district priorities, all of that great stuff. We want to enhance what you already have by providing supplemental reading that's really going to give students that practice time that they need to really practice those skills that you teach day in and day out. Oftentimes as an educator, I found that I would be thinking I was giving my students enough time to actually engage in academic reading and really dive into the text. But by the time I actually set expectations, got materials out, and had my students really get immersed into the story or the books that they were reading, the bell would ring and they would quickly have to shift to something else. So we want to make sure that we're giving them that time to do that practice. The research has suggested in order for students to grow 1 year in reading, they need to be in text at least 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes at minimum. So we want to make sure that we're providing those avenues and those resources like Newsela so that students can have adequate enough practice time to practice those skills that you're teaching very diligently every day. Another found that Newsela increases reading scores for students of all demographic subgroups. So again, to me, that what that says is it doesn't matter if you're from a rural environment, it doesn't matter if you're from a suburban environment, and it doesn't matter if you come from a generation who suffers from a generational lack of access, so to speak. We're going to provide a lot of material that's going to provide that window and mirror effects for your students. Windows so that they can see into the lives of others who may not look like them, so that they can basically empathize with others from diverse backgrounds and cultures and appreciate diversity, and then actually provide a mirror so that they can see their reflections and their identities and experiences represented in many of the things that they read on Newsela, which is awesome. Again, here's some other efficacy studies. I'll just let you take a look at the screen really quickly. So as you can see, teachers really believe in the product. They believe in the solution. Most of those percentages, I'm sure, jumped out at you that they were over 90%, which is really great. And again, this is all studies that we've done with teachers. We are believers of teachers. We are former teachers. We are advocates for educators. So this is just stuff that we found by polling and asking different questions. I love the one about alignment. 95% of teachers said Newsela offers content that is well aligned with their teaching goals. So that hits on what we spoke about earlier. We want to make sure that we are providing content that's well aligned and suited to your priorities and your daily lesson objectives and your overall scopes and sequences, so that we can make your life a little bit easier and give you time back, which is awesome. Another one, 97% on knowledge. Teachers said Newsela helps their students improve general knowledge on topics because they're going to be getting new schema. They're going to be activating new schema. We're going to be giving them new background knowledge so that when they go and read things in fiction, or they want to make text-to-text connections from different nonfiction texts, that they'll already have general knowledge that's being built up from just learning new things that they are interested in reading every day in Newsela. As you all may know, Newsela itself is an instructional content platform where you can find some of the coolest, freshest information in nonfiction globally. We have over 12,000 articles at this point in English, and about maybe around 3,500, over 3,000 for sure in Spanish. Actually, 25% of our collection is in Spanish, which is really awesome to help attune to those needs of our multilingual learners and our students who are going to need that additional language support. All of our articles come at 5 different reading levels, which is really astounding. We're able to meet all of your learners across their various learner pathways in your classrooms, right at their ZPD or their zone of proximal development, where they can have growth and success as a reader, which is really awesome. For the very first time, your students who are really striving to read, your students who are on grade level, and your students who are above grade level will actually be able to have academic discourse around the same topic, because they all are able to read at a level that's most accessible to them. And that's something that's really profound. And that's one of the things that I love about Newsela. If you notice along the bottom here, you'll see some different content providers. We have over 55 content providers, from folks like AP, Bio, National Geographic Creative, the Washington Post. You name it and can think of them, they're probably a content provider. And that, again, that's something that's really awesome about Newsela. Gone are those days where teachers have to spend their Sundays sitting on Google trying to vet resources to find things that are really valid and reliable for their students and not loaded with implicit bias. You know that when you're looking at an article in Newsela, we're giving you all the pertinent information about the article, and you know that it's coming from a high quality provider. And many of these things that you will see have been birthed in the real world. Whenever you log onto Newsela, the first thing you all will see is the hero article, and every single day this article will change, and it really gives students something to say yes to. just like they're constantly interacting with social media and video gaming and things like that. This is our way to speak that same digital language. And that's one thing that's really cool, that every time they log on, they'll get to see something different. As you scroll down on the bottom of your homepage, you may notice that there's lots of different other articles from different categories. We've produced 5 to 7 new articles every single day in both English and Spanish. So kids are getting up to 10 new pieces of nonfiction, which is awesome. And you can see here, these are just articles that have been published within the week or the week before. So we have the health category, arts category, science. You can even really see this cool one about ice cream from insect milk. I mean, what kid doesn't want to eat ice cream from insects? You can also see other options down here to explore. Just some suggested features, just like you're on Spotify or you're on Apple iTunes, and they tell you listeners also listen to. This is also kind of that speaking that same language of just suggesting content for both your students and yourself. As you click into any Newsela article, every single article will have the same kind of clean, beautiful, crisp look, which is great because students don't have to worry about images moving or titles moving or changing. All they'll need to focus on is building that muscle memory around those specific reading routines and procedures that you have them doing while they're in the article. So as you can see, this article here comes from the arts and culture section. It's a biography on author Toni Morrison, so that would be the byline. And then you also have who wrote the article, and this comes from biography.com, editors, A&E Networks, adapted by Newsela staff. You'll also be able to see the text level 7 and the word count. Well, don't worry, students will never ever see that text level, never ever know that this is most suitable for a 7th grader. All they'll see is the word count, and the titles and stuff may change, but the content will never change, and they will never have access to know exactly what their reading level is unless you tell them. If you notice up here, this is called the level converter, as many of you guys are familiar with. The level converter is the magic of Newsela, and this is where we can produce those 5 different levels. We have levels from the max level, which would be the most challenging access point here, all the way down to the 510 Lexile level, which would be the access point, the access point that would be most accessible for your student who would be really striving to read. And as you all know, I saw there was many reading teachers in this particular session. Lexile levels are dealing with the complexity of text, like themes, syntactical structure, things of that nature. As I continue through, every single article will come with some default activities. The first is going to be the write prompts. The write prompt was developed by the folks up at Teachers College Writers Workshop with Lucy Calkins and her team. So everyone is going to have a really high quality prompt. That's one thing that's really great about this. But if you like to edit or customize, you can always click the edit button here. When you click the edit button, it will allow you to go in and either delete the prompt. Maybe you want to add in sentence frames or sentence stems for your multilingual students who struggle with language acquisition or putting sentences together. That could be one way that you may want to use the Newsela write prompt for particular students. A lot of my teachers in Texas, they love the Texas Star, who I'm working with you guys. And many times they'll put their write prompt from their summative star right into this and start to train their students to on how they would like for them to respond. That's closely linked to that summative Texas Star assessment, which is great. They do that a lot here in Georgia as well with the Georgia Milestones. Again, every single question will come with a 4-question formative assessment quiz that's aligned to 2 different reading skills. If you just hover over here to this area, you'll usually get a drop down that will tell you what the text says and more information there. You would just simply click through if you want to see the correct answer for all the choices. This is really great if you want to do some type of item analysis. Maybe everyone is choosing A and the question is D. That would be great information for you to know when you look into your teacher binder, and maybe you will want to create some type of do now or exit ticket relative to this particular question. Maybe you want to start having your kids thinking about how much cognition is required for each question. I would have my students sometimes write deep thinking or thin, like DT or T. Deep thinking meaning like this required text evidence, my schema, my background knowledge, and then I had to come up with something new that the author wasn't telling me with the inference. Or if it's just a thin question, it would be a factual question that would be right there in the story. They could label those or just start to get their mind ready for looking at the questions prior to jumping into text if you wanted to do textual analysis or something, textual analysis or anything like that. Notice here there's a report the question. We really value what teachers have to say at Newsela. So if you feel like the question is a little bit ambiguous or your students are really struggling, you can always feel free to report the question. We work really hard at Newsela to get rid of bad questions. Bad meaning questions that kids always get right and questions that kids always get wrong. Earlier, you may have been wondering, well, Belton, how does Newsela know what level to give each student? The answer I get to tell you is that you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Newsela is smart. So as you assign these articles out to your students, they take these quizzes. Between the 5th and the 10th article that they read, Newsela is going to be able to understand their misconceptions as a reader, their interests, and is going to automatically adjust so that the next time that they get on after that, between that 5th and that 10th time, that they'll be reading at their just right reading level, that Goldilocks range, every time they get on the computer. So for example, I'm a 5th grade teacher. I set my account up in Newsela as a 5th grade teacher. When my students open up their computers, they're only going to see the articles at the 5th grade level. However, as you start to assign them by clicking this button, they answer these questions on these quizzes. Newsela is then able to identify that just right reading level. All right. I'm going to stop right here and see if you guys have any questions about the right prompts or the quiz, or is this stuff that you guys already feel familiar with and feel good about? You can just type yes or no. If you have questions, you can type it in there. I kind of just like to go over everything to make sure you guys feel set. All right. Seems like folks feel good about it. I'm going to keep moving. I'll keep looking at the chat should anything come up. Oh, I see something. Let's see. Are we able to know which standards are being assessed on the quizzes? Will we be able to see it? Absolutely. If you were to go online right here, technically, if I was live, these are just screenshots of a deck, but if I was to go live, you would be able to just simply hover and you would be able to see that. So if I got onto newsela.com, I'm going to sign in really quickly. Once you're inside, I am going to click into the quiz area here under activities. And then once I get to this quiz, I just simply hover right over this icon and it'll tell me determine central idea or themes of a text. All right. These are connected to the 8 essential reading skills, which isn't, it's loosely connected to Common Core because we can't really be connected to all of those Common Core with those, because there's so many states, but you can hover over and see everything. I'm saying, are we able to know which standards? Yes, we use Newsela in 4th grade and Word. Awesome, thank you. Okay, cool. That's that. The next thing I'm going to come back here that I would like to show you as we move through is the next thing is to assign. Oh, there it is right here. If you just hover over, you'll see it right there. I didn't know I had a shot of it. You'll be able to see that. You'll also be able to assign articles out in Newsela. You simply click this assign button. Once you go in, you have the option here to change the title. Maybe you don't want it to say Toni Morrison. You could have it say Unit 1, Lesson 1, Period 3, just by highlighting and deleting as if you would do anything else. The classes icon, there's a drop down. You could send it to one of your classes, you could send it to 2 of your classes, or you could send it to all of your classes or just one of your classes. Once you select them, there'll be little check marks that you'll be able to see. The most important piece here is the instructions. This is what I always tell teachers when I'm in person. This is where you set your intention for reading. Here you can see I just applied a basic thinking job, read the article 2 times, think about the important facts that the writer is trying to convey. Follow the steps below to get a deeper understanding of the text. When complete, take the quiz and answer the right prompt. So I want them to answer these steps, highlight 4 words you think are important to the article in red. Determining importance is a very important key skill for students. Step 2, highlight 3 things you found interesting or surprising. Step 3, highlight 2 questions you have to further your learning. And then step 4, highlight 1 opinion you had about the text in purple. And again, you have as much room as you want to include your instructions there. You can definitely align these to your lesson objectives, or if you have scripted questions written inside of your lesson plan, it could be easily just copied and pasted here, as well as focus questions or stylistically, however you want to do it. This is really important to set your intention with the instructions. That's the beauty about Newsela. It really allows for you to have your creativity and your own pedagogical savvy, which is awesome. And then you can include emojis, which I'll talk about later. Over here is a text level icon. Notice this Newsela in that I'm circling around right here. This is telling Newsela that if I assign it with this without changing anything or adjusting, that my students will get it at their just right reading level. So what Newsela has determined is their best level. However, if I want to adjust the level, I can adjust it and then I can lock the level at the particular grade level that I want my students to see the level. Maybe you're doing a shared reading experience or read aloud and it would be weird if they were all looking at different levels. So locking it could be one thing that you would want to do. Or maybe if you are familiar with Newsela and you know about our annotation feature, which I'll show you later, if you have really elaborate annotations, maybe you have red ones, annotations, and green ones and yellow ones, and you actually want to unpack those with your students or more methodically, that would be a great time to lock. Or it's really great to just lock if you want students to experience working in grade level text. There's a lot of research around having students really persevere and struggle in grade level text, because if they don't, by the time they get to the next grade, they won't have the prerequisite skills they need to be successful, and it won't be indicative of all the hard work you did on your throughout the year when they take their summative start. All right. All of the information when you assign your articles out will live in your teacher binder. To access your teacher binder, you scroll along your masthead and you will actually see, you will see binder right here. If you hover over binder, it will take you right into the teacher binder and you will have all of the assignments that you have made. You click into the assignment and you'll get a blue navigation panel that you see right here. So if I was to go into assignments, click in, then I would have a list of all of my students. Notice you're seeing some green lines here. Those green lines are indicating that there's some work that still needs to be graded on your part. So you have the student's name, their data, student name, their data, and so forth. Notice how on Eduardo you can see this little Newsela N that I'm circling. Notice how we see it for Lori as well. And notice how we see it for Brooke and Erica. But do we see that Newsela N for Joshua Brown? No, we're not seeing it. And what that is telling you as an educator, I want to draw your attention to this, is that that's letting you know that Joshua has gone in and changed his reading level. Maybe he wanted to read it at an easier level and not at his just right reading level like all the other students. Or maybe he thought he was more advanced than what he was, because you can see he has a 50% here with that light bulb. That light bulb is indicating our quiz. So maybe he changed it for whatever reason, but that would be great info for you to know as a teacher, to tell him that right now we're reading it at our just right reading level, and to make sure that he's doing and sticking with the team. All right. Students can always change their reading levels. That is promoted. But if you want them to participate in the quiz, unless you specify differently by locking the level, they should typically be reading it at their just right reading level. If you adjust the level and lock it, they still have to take the quiz at what you locked it at. But once they've taken the quiz, they can then go in and change their level like Joshua's done. Just wanted to give you that insight. So the lightning bolt here represents power words, which we'll talk about in a second. So they basically did a power word activity, and you can see he has 100%. The pencil is representing the right prompt, and this little thought bubble is the annotation feature. So right now, Eduardo doesn't have any annotations quite yet. We can see that there's some annotations that are grayed out there. That are ready to be graded. And then here, notice how this one is gray for Erica. So this one's gray, so that's letting us know that Erica hasn't done an annotation. So you may want to nudge her. This acts just as a Google Doc, so these numbers can change real time. So if you have this up on your screen, you'll be able to know what students were doing and how they're performing right away. All right. Once you click into Eduardo, you can see that I clicked into this because it's a different color blue. This panel on the right-hand side will appear. Sorry about that. You'll have the quiz. You would see how it's indicating the blue here. That lets you know that you're in the quiz portion. If you were to click over, that blue would move to the right. And then if you clicked over again, that blue would move to power so that you could see all of that data. So here you'll be able to see what the student choice was versus the correct choice. You can see that they match up. So the student did well. Just like before, you can click through and you'll be able to see all the choices again if you want to try to do some item response theory, or you're trying to do some item analysis. You can always look at the information there. Notice how you can reset the quiz here. I know that things happen. Kids throw up, there's soft lockdowns, fire drills. So we always give you the option to reset the quiz. The right prompt as well, if you were to click over into the right prompt, it would give you a 4-level rubric. I don't actually have that right now, but you would be able to see a 4 question rubric if you would like. Let me just get into the binder. I'll show you. And this is the same process you would go through to access that article, except you wouldn't have to click in to do all that clicking. You would see this, you would click in. Again, you would have your information with your title. You could see that this was sent out at the just right reading level. You also get this view here, which is kind of, again, this will act like a Google Doc. You can see the activity real time. To get where I was with the blue navigation panel, notice how this gray is just bouncing. You can click anywhere there, the image or there or here, the hyperlink, and it will take you right over there. So now that I'm clicking into Eduardo, I want to show you this right. You'll be able to see that this has a 4-question rubric that you're able to grade students and give them feedback. If you wanted to give them further feedback to go in, you could always say, Eduardo, great job. However, look at paragraph 2 again. Think more intentionally about X, Y, Z, rewrite, or whatever you wanted to say. That digital dialogue would continue as long as you would want it to. And that's essentially the right prompt. Power words, again, you'll be able to see how they performed on that activity, which we'll get into in power words and just when we get into our vocabulary session in just a second. All right, I'll pause right here and just see if you guys have any questions. Any questions about what you're seeing with the binder? Maybe you guys are familiar with the binder. Maybe I'm showing you something new. I always like to try to just expose folks to the things that Newsela naturally has that you might not be taking advantage of. But that's where all your data will be in terms of grading that assignments page there. The next portion that you'll see in your binder will be the reading summary. And the reading summary looks like this. It's pretty much like a diagnostic view. You have your students who are outperforming, those who are on track, those who are below, and so forth. You'll have your reading levels here. So if you want to look at the reading level at any point in time, you'll always have access to that just right reading level. And these should always be changing. As they are working with Newsela, you're teaching them new skills. These numbers will change. You have the percentile rank, the articles view, average quiz score, average time in article, annotations, and then the reading skills. The reading skills, if you were to hover over like I'm doing now, it'll usually pop up what the text says. You can always know what the skill is just by hovering. Notice what happens here. If I click reading level twice, notice what will happen to the reading skills. So now I flip the data. So now I can better see just by clicking reading level twice that Lori and Timothy and Jesse are all struggling with that same particular skill. I know that that's what the text says if I hover over it. So then you could start to differentiate by learner environment or start to group them heterogeneously or homogeneously, whatever you wanted to do. And you would be able to create groups and then further send out articles on what the text says to that group. So the binder here in the reading summary is going to give you that information. It'll also give you historical information. So if you wanted to click into a particular student from that table that we saw, like Lori here, it'll give you historical data on how Lori has been performing over time, as well as what she's doing in her English class and what she's reading independently. You would just click these tabs and it would expand into those particular articles that you could see. All right. Any questions so far before we dive into our vocab session? You guys feel good about just the basics of Newsela? Do you have any questions? Again, you can feel, oh, nice. I see some yeses, some exclamation points. Okay, cool. Hopefully this is helpful. We still, don't worry. We have like 30 minutes left. I'm going to still get through everything. So the first thing that I'm going to go into is this activity called Let the Cat Out of the Bag. And what I would like for you guys to do is I want you to get your brain ready. And I just want you to take about 25 seconds just to read this sentence right here. And I want you to tell me what it says. You can type it right into the box as soon as you see it. So which one of my super teachers thinks that they know what this is saying? A. James. Similarly, your mind is reading this automatically without even thinking about it. Yes. And you put the 17. Absolutely. Very good. Very good. So this is an activity that just is really interesting to me that our brain is able to do this. All right. Why are we able to do this as readers? That's just a question that I thought about when I had this on the screen. And to answer that is fundamentally, we're able to do this because it's related to the way that our brains work as readers, and in terms of the neuroscience, that is. We use context to help us decode any situation that we're familiar with and even unfamiliar with, like what you're seeing right now. And as adult readers, we make assumptions about the context of the things that we are able to read. Oftentimes, our students don't have that context. So reading something like this would be very, very difficult for them, just for the simple fact that we have more context in terms of schema, in terms of really developing and decoding these situations. Context and patterns, absolutely, absolutely. Very good. That's exactly what we just mentioned, and you're exactly right. All right. So how did that feel to you guys? Was that stressful? Was that easy? Just think about it relative. How can we use this with the new reading curriculum? Gotcha. Absolutely. We're going to talk about all of that stuff of how you can use this right away. So many of you might have felt stressed about this, or you might have felt like, whoa, or maybe you were like, this is really easy for me. And the reason why it was probably easy, because again, our brains are really set up to be able to decode these situations that we're familiar and unfamiliar with. But think about your striving students, or your striving reader who is learning a new language, or who's just really struggling with comprehension or fluency, maybe negating comprehension, how this could be something that would be really difficult for them. All right. And we're going to take that same approach and think about that activity that we just did, with addition to our striving students, or students who are maybe our multilingual learners, or those two students together. We're going to think about how we can assist them with this process. So when they're looking at words and trying to decode, it's not looking like Morse code like we just saw. All right. So one way that you can do this is you can really zoom in on a particular chunk of text, like you see right here. And as I look at this particular chunk of text, I want to think about what words or phrases might make this passage difficult to understand. I'm going to give you just a few seconds just to look at it. And if you see any words or patterns that would be difficult, you can just type them into the chat box. Persians, absolutely. I'm saying Persians. Irrigate, very good. Parallel, horizontal, productivity. Yes, all of those words are going to be very high. Continuously, yes, that's another one that's going to be difficult. All of those words are going to be a real feat for your students who are really striving to read, who may not have that domain specific vocabulary like we're seeing right now. All right. Irrigate, to absorb energy, might be something else that you saw. All of those words that you mentioned continuously, irrigate, parallel, Persians, those words will be like words that our students would most likely struggle with. And it could really prevent them from having that context of understanding, because they don't really, there's no linguistic patterns really here. It's just really tier 3, tier 2 vocabulary, which could be really hard for them. If they don't understand irrigate, then they won't really understand the wind's process and how those two unions work together. All right. The reason why I wanted to chunk this for you guys is because this comes directly from a Newsela article, this one that you see right here, which is all about wind power. All right. And it comes from the science and the math section. And now that we're in this article, we can start to think about some of that vocabulary that you guys just mentioned, that horizontal, productivity, irrigate, Persians. We can start to think about those words. And I want to model for you how students, when they get to a word they don't know, how they can use one of our features of the annotation feature to highlight that word. All right. So if we're looking at this particular article that we're seeing right now, I'm just going to read the beginning graph. As early as the 6th century, Persians discovered that wind could be used to move water and irrigate crops. In early windmills, the sails spun parallel to the ground. The design also proved useful for grinding grains under a slowly turning stone. By the 14th century, Europeans improved productivity by shifting to a horizontal axis. This allowed each clock blade to absorb energy continuously. All right. So one thing I want to do now is that we can look at is we know that this has a lot of loaded, intense vocabulary for our students. Notice how at the level converter here, we're at the 1040 Lexile level, and the 1040 Lexile level is really the 7th grade level. So if I'm working with some students and I'm a 7th grade teacher, or they're just particularly at that 7th grade level, one thing you could do is you could highlight keyword vocabulary words like irrigate crops, which would indicate to students that this would be a place that I might want to stop and kind of add a scaffold or help to unpack the meaning of that a little bit more so that students could understand the word. Or if you didn't want to scaffold, what you may want to do another strategy is you can actually change the level from the 1047. Maybe we need to take it down to the 900 Lexile level and see if the text actually changes and if it could be more of a manageable strategy for them to change the text level down. So now we're at the 900 level. Remember what I just read a second ago? This is now changed to this. Early forms of wind power have been around for hundreds of years. We're not even talking about the Persians anymore. In 1888, an American named Charles Bush built the first full-scale electric wind turbine. So as you can see here, the language has gotten definitely much more digestible for students. And it's just a kind of a subtle way of how you can use things like the level converter within Newsela to allow vocabulary to really not impede understanding by simply just changing the level for students. So the two strategies here are, again, highlight words that you think are going to be those key words that are going to be tricky for students and really front load those words. You can pick whatever highlight color you like and just kind of scaffold that meaning for them. Or you could suggest to maybe certain groups of your students or populations within your classroom to have them go in and change that Lexile level so that it could be much more digestible for your students. Any questions about those two particular strategies? They're pretty straightforward, but just always great to highlight because we have this tool of being able to highlight. And to annotate, guys, you simply highlight and drag your cursor like you're going to copy and paste, and those 4 beautiful colors will appear. All right. And that's how you should, that's how annotation happens if you didn't know. I know it's not super intuitive, so I wanted to mention that to you all. The next activity we're going to talk about is one called the best of both worlds. And in this best of both worlds, we dive into this whole idea of just different vocabulary instruction and how at Newsela, we've really aligned our whole vocabulary processes and within our solution to the work of Isabel Beck and her team. And if you're not familiar with Isabel Beck, she is a seminal expert within the realms of vocabulary and academic language. She wrote a book called Bringing Words to Life. I think that's the name, Bringing Words to Life, yes. So if you're interested in a gateway to foundational vocabulary instruction, Isabel Beck will be a great person for you to refer to. And she believes that language can be organized into 3 main tiers, like you see here. We have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 would be like those sight words, those words that repeat the most or you find them the most in the English language. And for my elementary teachers, if there are any in there, tier 1 vocabulary would be those the, he, a, them, jump, like all of those types of words that we would see a lot in the English vocabulary. Tier 2 would be more of those academic language words that are really relevant across curriculum, compare, contrast, analyze. They're just those words that students are most likely to encounter no matter what subject they're in. You could think about tier 2 like that. And then tier 3, those are going to be those subject-specific words or those domain-specific words. Photosynthesis is one that you might think of. Parallelogram, just those types of words that you might see throughout a unit of study per se. All right. We're going to think about these tiers through the lens of this particular article, Insect Carrying Diseases, Triple Local and State Health Department See Funds Cut. So in just a second, we'll hop into that article. But before we do that, now that we've talked a little bit about the tiered vocabulary and Isabel Beck's organization of these tiers, I want you to think about this, all right? I want you to think about these words that you see here: susceptible, said, anaplasmosis. All right. And I want you to do a quick word sort. If you had to say, we could just use our chat icon. If you had to say susceptible, what tier would you say that it is? 1, 2, or 3? You guys could just type it right in the chat box. Is susceptible tier 1 vocabulary, tier 2, or tier 3? Seeing tier 1, tier 2, tier 2. I'll wait about 2 more seconds. I'm seeing tier 2. Cool. For all my folks that said tier 2, you are correct. Susceptible is a tier 2 vocabulary word. So good job if you knew that that was a tier 2 word. Now, think about the word said. Said, would that be a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3? Go ahead and type it in your chat box. Well, you guys are fast. Seeing some ones, some ones, some ones, some ones. Very good. If you guys said 1 or the ones are in your brain and you're about to type it in there, you are absolutely right. Said is a very common word that as an elementary teacher I taught as sight words many times. If you look at said is a word that is not decodable and you must know that word on sight. So absolutely, said is a tier 1 vocabulary. So if susceptible is tier 2 and said is tier 1, what do we think anaplasmosis is? 3, 3, 3. You are all got it. Absolutely. You are so right. And this is just a quick word sort. This is an activity that you could easily use with your students as well if you wanted them to start to just think about vocabulary in terms of the tiers. That would be another strategy that could be also fun and group work for students as well. What we're going to do now is we're going to see how these actual words or these particular tiering, how that looks in Newsela. All right. And one way that we've been able to incorporate some of Isabel Beck's philosophy in her work is through our power words, which you guys all have power word accounts because you're pro clients, which is amazing. I love power words. So when students see a power word, they'll know they're approaching a power word because there'll be this green line here that appears right under the word. You can see it here with the word breeding, also with the word susceptible. So if my student got to the word susceptible, they would simply click susceptible. The word would pop down. They would have a definition for them, as well as the auditory support for that multilingual learner or that striving student that they could hear the word said to them. They simply click got it, and they would be moving on throughout the rest of the article. All right. Once they are done, they would go up here into this activities button. Once they click the activities button, that will take them where the quiz is, the right prompt, and then also if there's a power word, if there is a power words in the article, they will have an activity that looks like this. We call it an activity because it's simply that. There's no data that you really get in the binder that we looked into that's involving activities. We see it when we go into grade just to get information on how they're performing with words and context and things of that nature. However, there's nothing that we really as teachers have that really details information on this relative to performance unless we just go into the actual assignment and look. All right. So here we'll be able to see some of the different types of questions. Which sentence is an example of the word susceptible? Emma had fair skin because her parents were of German and Irish descent. Emma's fair skin made her more likely to get sunburned. So you can see that this example is more aligned to how we would use the word susceptible in context. All right. So if we want to find, so any questions so far just about the activities, the power word activity, it's pretty straightforward. It's about 8 questions as you can see here, synonyms, antonyms, words, and context. And they are to complete this typically after they read the article and go through the words. You guys feel good about that? Is there any normal understanding? Is that the flow that you guys have been using, the way in which you guys have been using power words? Okay, I'm assuming so. So I'm going to keep things moving. So how do you find articles with power words? I'm going to show you right now. So if you're looking for a particular article, say we were looking on that article about bugs. I know my kids just got back from summer. one thing that could be really relatable to them is mosquito bites, or just that idea of what it feels like to itch. And sometimes not knowing that sometimes insects really carry diseases that we need to know about as humans. So if I wanted to search on that topic of diseases, I'm just going to search by the actual word. So you can click this little magnifying glass here. Once you click that magnifying glass, I'm simply going to type in disease right on that line, and then I'm going to click go. All right. Once I've done that, you can see that we're in the article view now. So these are all the articles that have that word disease in it or talks about diseases extensively. All right. If you want to look at articles that go along the bottom, you can continue to scroll down and see other articles. What I want to draw your attention to here with this is the more filters. All right. So if you wanted to filter articles to find articles that specifically have power words that you could do these activities with, you could go to more filters. Once you click more filters, when you're inside, you'll see an icon where you can select for Newsela to filter articles that only specifically focus on power words. Once I've selected that, you want to go and click apply at the top, because if you don't click apply, then Newsela won't know to surface those articles that you're looking for with power words. All right. Now that I've done that, you can now see at the bottom on the item view of the article, you can see that this lightning bulb is represented again. Anytime you see that lightning bulb, just like when we were looking in the binder, that's going to let you know that the article has a power word activity. Notice here how you can also see the lightning bulb. That's letting you know it has a quiz, and this ES is letting you know that there's a Spanish version. I wanted to box this particular icon for you as well, because this icon is how you can save. If you don't want to save when you're inside the article and you see an article that you like, you can simply click this tab as well, and that will allow you to save the article too. If you just wanted to know that it had a power where you could click quickly save it and look at it later. All right. Once you've saved the articles like we've done, you can notice that it's saved because it's a black tab instead of this one that's clear. You would just go hover over your name and go to Save by You. Once you're in Save by You, those articles that you save with the power words will be right there waiting for you to go in and highlight your vocabulary to scaffold or do any of those vocabulary activities that you would like to do. All right. So what I want you guys to do now, we have a little bit of time before we end. I want you to search and save some articles with power words. See if you can find 3 articles and think about how this supports your students. How will the article help you build background knowledge? How can it increase your reading independence? And how will it enhance student writing? So I want you to think about those things. I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes to search and see if you can find some articles that have power words just like the way I showed you. And if you have questions, you can feel free to chat in a minute as well. And if I didn't tell you guys before, I want to make mention those power words that you see in the article, those are tier 2 vocabulary words that are naturally embedded in the article. So those are tier 2 words. All right, I hope you guys were able to find some articles. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep things moving. I'm going to show you guys one last strategy relative to power words before I let you guys go. And you'll have my email if you need to catch up with me. All right. So now that we are actually in an article per se, I found an article I like. I know that my kids just got back from summer, like I said before, and I know that they can all relate to a pesky mosquito bite. They've been at the pool, they've been at cookouts, so I already know that it's going to be something that could be interesting to them that I know that they'll be able to talk about. All right. Notice we're in the student view, so the view that we're looking in right now would be most closely associated with what students would see if when they were in Newsela and their particular devices. So as I scroll down into the text here, I'm going to be thinking about the activities piece. My students have gone into the article. They've read those 3 to 5 tier 2 vocabulary words. It's going to really help them with that learned vocabulary. They're going to go into the activities, and now they're going to click right into the power words. So this is where they will go again to start to answer those questions. So which word goes with bugs, vectors, or analysis? They would go ahead and click through. Which sentence is an example of the word notable? Maya went home to Wisconsin for Thanksgiving like she did every November. It was strange for the weather in Wisconsin to be this warm in November. Notable, they would choose which one is most closely associated to notable. And then they also have the option to check their answer down here. I wanted to show you this, guys as well. They can check their answer to see if they got the how they're doing relative to their own performance, which is really cool. So I wanted to mention that. They would continue on throughout this process. Finally, when they've gotten to the end, it'll tell them you got 5 out of 6 points earned. And then they'll be able to have these words that will be included on the student end on a student word wall. So anytime they're interacting with power words or taking these activities, they're able to gain these words, and these words are then added to a student word wall that looks like this. Once they click finish, you can go to the student word wall here. They simply hover over their binder and they'll have something that says word wall, as you can see here. And then the word wall will appear, and these will be all of the words that students have been reading in the articles that you've been assigned. Again, they can click on these words, they can hear it read to them again. It's just a great way that you can use these words in writing, guided reading, and a host of different things in terms of really building vocabulary. So the next exercise I want to do just quickly before we leave, this is the last thing I want you to do. You could have your students have their word walls up, and you could really have them increase more you could really include more active engagement by doing activities like this called silly sentences. And what I would have my kids do is I would have them pick 2 of the words that they see in their word wall. I would give them a note card, and I would have them create the craziest, silliest, funniest sentence that you can use, but making sure that they have 2 of those words from their word wall in it. So I'm not saying equality biology, that's the sentence. No, you could say the Halloween clown was showed a lot of equality in biology class by drinking beer, or whatever it is that you wanted to say, but you could have them create like a really silly sentence using 2 of those words. They could then jigsaw with their partners and share those words out. It's just a way to make this a really active experience for them in terms of using the word wall. All right. So that's the one activity that you can encourage them to do, is include silly sentences. And again, all of these strategies are going to be inside of your agenda so that you can go in and utilize with your students the very next day. All right. So before I close out, if you want more support with your students with vocabulary, the silly sentences or vocabulary summaries could be a great thing to include. Again, vocabulary summaries are included in your agenda. You can ask students to open their word wall, write a paragraph using at least 5 of the words to describe something or explain something recently learned. If they're more independent, there's another activity I included called playing mystery words with your classroom. Ask your students to select a word from the word wall, act it out for the class in the game of charades. Students can read the sentences without the word, and then they can guess which word is being demonstrated. All right. So I'm just going to close out with that. If you guys have any questions, I want to honor you guys' time. It's 5:28 at this point. If there's anything that you have questions about relative to Newsela, vocabulary words, you can let me know. Pretty straightforward session here with Newsela. The power word feature is really one of the most amazing things that you can utilize. I would encourage you guys to continue to front load by annotating vocabulary and scaffolding it, so that your students who are striving or your students who are really struggling to make meaning, you can also do some of those activities as well. All right, any last final questions here? Again, everything that you will need to utilize, that you can pull up again, will be here. You have a link to the Teacher Learning Hub. This is where you can find some of the coolest resources for Newsela. Maybe you want to focus on the power words, and you're looking for additional resources. You can click Power Words in our Teacher Learning Center, and it'll tell you how they work. You'll see a quick video, and they'll have additional strategies that you can use where you can include a vocabulary here. So I would definitely say check out our Educator Center. There's lots of really cool resources there, and you can simply just type in the box right here, and it will pull it up. All right. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope I'm noticing that it's kind of quiet in the chat bubble, but if you do need anything, you can feel free to reach back out to me here at my email in this agenda. And if you can have a second, if you could go back to go.newsela.com Belton, you will be able to do just a quick survey on this session. So click it in here, and then you will have a survey form here. All right, and this would be Newsela Pro, and it would be vocabulary instruction. No problem. Thank you for being here. Hopefully this was something that was helpful. Vocabulary, again, is really straightforward. Utilize it how you feel is going to be best for your students in your classroom. Teachers and students, you guys will always remain the experts. All right? No problem. Thank you. Again, email me if you have any questions. No problem.